Welcome to, I've lost count, but still another part of a continuing conversation with Richard Burton, which has proved that he's as interesting off stage as he is on. And if you will simply welcome him again, I won't waste any more time telling you who he is. I learned that one thing one doesn't do with you is to offer you a massage. When your arm was bothering you, I know a masseur, and I was going to send him over as a little gift, but you don't like to be rubbed and
or touched or
touched.
Anyway, yes, I find it. It's been one of the things that's quite difficult in acting, is that I don't like to be touched by other actors or actresses or whatever, unless it's absolutely essential to the scene.
Would you?
I shrink immediately.
Really?
I don't know why.
Bite a bullet during love scenes and.
Well, I think that's my great weakness as an actor. I'm not very good at love scenes, though God knows I've done enough of them. And some very perceptive critics have picked that up. Ken Tynan, in particular, never stops saying that I can't make love on the screen, and he's probably right.
Confined himself to that, did he?
Yes. No, he once gave me a notice, Ken Tynan. I'm rather fond of Ken Tynan, because his notices are, though barbed, they're witty. Yeah. And I was playing Ferdinand in The Tempest, and I really didn't want to play it. And I begged the producers, to let me out of it. I said, I'd be one of the dancers, anything. I said, but please don't make me play Ferdinand. It's an unplayable part. And anyway, they said, no, it's in the contract, you have to do it. So I played it. And the critics were quite nice about it, quite friendly, except for Tynan, who said, I'm pretty sure it was Tynan. I must ask him, because it's such a long time ago. Whoever it was anyway said, as for Mr. Richard Burton as Ferdinand, this is the first time we've ever seen the part played by a bull.
And you took that as negative, did you? I suppose there are actors who would like to be called a bull on the stage. But,
yes.
And it's funny that you were considered too effeminate at one point in your career. I really have found that very hard to believe. That story you told about, well, that is exactly how he put it. But what was it? Too light, too pretty, too
pretty. Yes.
Too something or other.
Too pretty.
What did you sound like in the early days when Philip Burton, the man you mentioned, very important in your life, had to correct the way you spoke so that you were acceptable on stage?
Well,
that's how it's
in
been
English
put.
Parts, you mean? Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I spoke with a Welsh accent, and so what did it sound like? I don't know. To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of trouble and by proposing end them. I sounded a bit like that.
I rather like that, but then some people find German unpleasant sounding, and I think it's quite beautiful.
I think it's beautiful.
How would it sound in German?
Sein oder nicht sein, das ist die Frage. Ob's edler im Gemut die Pfeil und Schleudern. Beautiful.
Japanese? Do I look impressed? I certainly am, if I don't. Would you talk about booze for a moment?
If you like.
As a kind of maybe public service or whatever?
I think I've done enough public service in that direction. However, if it helps anybody, yes.
Well, it might very well. I guess what I want to know is how do you know when you're in trouble with your...
I think that nobody quite knows which drink it is that takes him over the edge of being merely a social or hearty, laughing drinker into a morose and hungover, wretched creature who shakes and creaks and sweats and has nightmares, and it's always November and it's raining and it's 3 o'clock in the morning and there's nowhere to go, and you reach out for a cigarette and smoke and think of all the horrible things you've done in your life and all the shame all the shames you endured and suffered, and the shame you gave other people, and all the wrongs you've done other people. I don't know whether alcoholics can put it quite as eloquently as that. Usually they just say, I just stared out of a window for 2 years. And it is, believe me, the question of being an alcoholic, I'm not quite sure that I am one, but if I'm not one, I'm very near. I'm very right on the edge of being one. But it is no laughing matter. It really is not a laughing matter. Alcoholism is a dreadful disease. And my sympathy for, I believe there are something like 15 million Americans alone who are alcoholics. And my sympathy for them and my affection for them is profound. They come up to me, you know, as being a representative figure of this dreadful disease. And one of the things they love to do is to tell stories about what they got up to when they were drunk. And I listen and I laugh. And they genuinely funny, some of the stories. But it is a tragic disease and a dreadful one. And I think, well, no, I can't say that I've beaten it, because as Jimmy Breslin, who was a dear friend of mine, wrote me a short but very eloquent letter once, some years ago, when I was in trouble with drink. And he said, don't forget the drink. And he used the analogy of a boxing match, and that you're always fighting. You're always fighting. And the other fella is booze. And you evade him. You evade him. But one of these days, unless you're careful, he's going to nail you right on the chin. And down you go. So it's a continual fight. Every day it's a fight. When you get through the day and you finally put your head on the pillow and you sleep, you say, I've beaten that boxer for yet another day.
Another day.
And so for the rest of your life, you're stuck with that shadowy figure, always, always coming at you, always coming at you. And there is every conceivable excuse. Take a drink. I got a bad notice, I take a drink. I got a good notice, I take a drink. As to one would if you didn't have my particular self-control and, of course, the enormous assistance of my wife.
Yeah.
Without Susan, I think, without any exaggeration whatsoever, I might very easily be dead. I'm not joking, I mean that.
Yeah.
When I played Equus in New York 4 years ago, it was the first time in my life I'd ever been on the stage without a drink. And I shook and I shivered, and she knew, Susan knew. And I had, as you know, an enormous success in that. And the audiences were fantastically kind, and they gave me standing ovations and all that. But every night we never knew if I'd crack. And never once, for instance, did she hide the booze or anything like that. There was a bottle of vodka and there was a bottle of gin right in the dressing room. All I had to do was open the door and there it was.
Yeah.
And it was, I was in it for 12 weeks. And one performance which Tony Perkins very kindly gave me on a Saturday matinee to sort of run me in before anybody knew I was going to be in it, that I was opening. So we counted the performances. It's the only time. I don't count them in Camelot because I'm over that, over that hurdle. But he's still there. That fella's still there. And all I can say is to anybody in this country or in the world who has the same problem, you have my deepest sympathies, and I hope you have a wife like mine. That's all.
Should hang on to that. It was certainly heartwarming, wasn't it, when you missed a performance the other night from illness, of how certain
well, the press insisted that I was drunk, which I wasn't.
Yeah, everybody was willing, blazing them.
No, it was a combination of drugs that I simply, I became deathly ill with cortisone and something else. However, the next night I was a little apprehensive, to put it mildly, to go on the stage, and I was taken home and put to bed by Susan, and then I woke about 3 in the morning when this inside I'd been vomiting and going back and forth to the lavatory all night. And I said, now tell me what happened. Because it was the ultimate in actors' nightmares. It happened to me once before when I was playing Hamlet here on Broadway. And I lifted up my arm when I screamed in the middle of "Oh, what a rogue and peasant slave am I," and I couldn't get my arm down again. And my makeup ran right off my face, as it did the other night, ran right off my face onto my costume. And I couldn't move and I couldn't speak. And so they had to bring the curtain down and give the money back to the audience. So the next night I went on and I thought, how influenced are people by the press? Because though I hadn't read it, I was told that the press were exulting in the fact that I'd failed on the Thursday night. And so when I came through when I made the entrance, which you've seen, which is fairly dramatic anyway, I was absolutely breathless. I wasn't quite sure what was going to happen. And I stepped out, and there was a most tremendous ovation. The stage manager tells me it ran on for something like 3.5 minutes.
That's a lifetime. And
on the stage, it's a lifetime. And I just stood there, and I could feel the audience supporting me, and the affection and the warmth is one of the most extraordinary experiences I've ever had in the theater. And I may say that the American public are generally enormously generous, much more so than, shall we say, the French, who believe that unless you're French, you might as well be dead.
It's a wonderful definition.
And they are enormously generous, but they certainly were that night. And so I gave a performance that was possibly the best I've given yet. It was on such a very high level. They made me turn it up several notches, so that the entire evening flew on wings, and the end was stupendous. And boy, was that a good feeling to be accepted back.
So the actor can be moved by the audience as well as the other way around.
Oh yes, I think the audience and the actor must become one person, one animal, one thinking creature, that they respond to everything you do because they make you do it. A bad house, to try and get a bad house to react in the right way is very, very hard work. But a good house, you can almost coast on them like surfing on a great wave. Yeah.
I wish I'd seen that performance. The one I saw was most impressive, and the thing that was mysterious about it, as I thought about it later, was that you didn't seem to do very much. By that I mean, if you saw a silent film of it, there was not. Partly, I know you were limited by bursitis, but it seemed to be more than that. And at the probably the definition of an economical performance, and yet at the end of the first act, there were wet eyes all around, and how you got so much emotional contact with the audience, in seeming to do. Not a flamboyant performance, I guess, physically is what I'm trying to say.
Well, one of the few axioms I work by as an actor is to get the greatest possible effect with the minimum possible visible effort.
That would seem to be a rule for film, but to be able to do it on the stage.
Yes, I think that that stage acting and screen acting can be very, very, very alike. Except, of course, that the microphone on film cannot take the size of the voice when it really screams or something like that, because you smash the mic. Yeah. So you're limited in that way in films. But on the stage, of course, there's no limit. You can scream to the high heavens, and the better you can scream, the better they react. But to scream from total immobility, when you're standing absolutely still, not a movement, and to pick up your voice and throw it without the body moving at all, is perhaps the ultimate in what I was saying, that you get the maximum effect with a minimum possible visible effort. Of course, the effort is tremendous, but it's hidden.
Yeah.
It's what?
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. I was wondering if you could do that in a role that demands great sword play and so on. You have to.
Well, for instance, in Hamlet, which I played here in New York, and I played at the Old Vic in London, Actually, it's the longest run of anything I've ever been in. Of one single play that I've ever been in was the Hamlet I did here. Because I always had an out, or I played in repertory where you played 5 or 6 different plays a week. But Hamlet was the longest run of just one part every night. And in that, of course, I moved all the time.
Sure.
I mean, except for certain specified, unwritten bits that you simply stood absolutely still. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, I moved almost like I played him as a manic depressive. And I moved around the stage all the time, never stopped moving. So it meant I lost a lot of weight. And also, of course, the fight is very,
it's a
very active.
It's a wonderful gift.